All right, everybody, welcome back to the Extra Mile Podcast. I am your host, Robert Bain. With me, as always, is my co-host, Perlmutter. Actually, not as always, but for most episodes, my man, Perlmutter. Perlmutter, first episode, season 2, another one. It's good to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you too. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, man. It's I think it's been an awesome start to the year. We're recording this here in January, and a lot of exciting things happening here at Carrier Direct. But before we dive into all that, let's talk about what's going on with you, sir.
Yeah, not a whole lot. It took a few days off over the holiday break between Christmas and New Year's, but not much going on. Just a couple personal days to decompress, spend some time with the kids.
Nice.
But we haven't been going around. We haven't been getting out too much with the current COVID climate. But staying safe, staying close to home. All good things. Happy New Year. I'm glad we made it to 2022. Yeah. We made it.
We did make it. We did make it, sir.
How are things going with you?
Man, life's good, man. Since we recorded last, we've done some just pretty cool things. I had my meet, so that was awesome. I enjoyed the holidays with my family. So back into training, getting ready for the next meet in June. My role has changed here a little bit as well, which is exciting. I'm going to be doing a little more partnership in biz dev, and so a little more public facing, which I'm super excited about. And that also means that we're going to be doing some of the conference circuit as those are reopening. Some of those are happening, some are not. Some I hear are going back virtual. Again, just given kind of some of the concerns around COVID and just general public health. So a little TBD there, but I can tell you for sure that you're going to get to see me at Manifest in Las Vegas here January 25th through 27th. And alongside that, we have a huge announcement regarding our branding, regarding Carrier Direct and the future of our business. And so with that, I'm going to actually turn it back to Perlmutter, and you can announce the new name that is going to be dropped the day before this episode drops, I believe.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to
it'll stir it up.
So big news, as Bain mentioned, we are rebranding. We will no longer be referred to as Carrier Direct. Now, Metaphora is the new company name. Metaphora, which of course in Greek is for transportation. I'm sure you already knew that though, right, Bain?
Oh, I absolutely. I thankfully listened to the all hands. They told us that. So otherwise I would definitely not have known, but really exciting, really cool. This rebranding is around really aligning with what it is our business is focused on. And that is moving transportation forward. And that really is our focus around, those in the transportation space versus our past, which very important and very exciting. And for those who kind of know our past, you may have heard a little bit about it when we talked to our CEO, Peter, but, our past was really around the connecting of carriers and shippers. And so very exciting to be part of this. This goes with new colors, new logos, all types of cool stuff. So we're really, really excited for this rebranding. And excited to be part of Team Metaphora. So that is our big announcement. You're going to see all that at Manifest, and you can see me, the strongest man in logistics, at our booth number 601. We're going to be right across from the demo area. So very excited to see everybody there, and introduce ourselves as Metaphora. So real quick though, we still had an awesome year, 2021, within our four walls, and I think we wanted to kind of highlight that a little bit. We had shared this on LinkedIn. Really we've grown tremendously, and the business is growing, has a ton of momentum. A couple of highlights. We had 23 new team members join this year, and we've gone fully remote. We are a remote forward culture. We understand that is kind of the sign of the times, as we've fully engaged in that. And we've actually have employees in 17 states full-time, I believe in 2 or 3 countries, for sure, Canada and the US, and possibly more that are actually full-time outside of our contracting team.
Yeah, really exciting. And I think you hit it there. I mean, substantial growth. We're seeing it throughout the industry, lots of opportunity for growth, and it's reflecting into the consulting space as well, which Peter spoke to a little bit in our last episode. But people are more open to consulting services, seeing how far they can take their business. That's a little leak for our tagline for our new rebrand.
Exactly.
But yeah, really exciting stuff. I know that when I joined, July of 2020. There were only about 35-ish full-time employees. So I mean, I know now we're just getting towards triple digits, getting close to 100 here. very exciting to be a part of a company that's growing this quickly, and also, just helping build up the employees. I know we had like 10 people celebrated promotions,
including Pima.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. And as you mentioned, like we signed up a bunch of different contractors. So really taking advantage of the best shore model to really fulfill all needs for our clients.
Yeah, definitely. And, highlighting one of the key things that's exciting for us that happen to work here, and those that have the opportunity to work with us. We have parental leave, 401k matching. It's really exciting because these are the things that start to define, some of these best places to work and some of these best practices around, how you become an attractive employer. And one of the ways that you attract, great talent is to be a great place to work. And so it's been really exciting to be a part of this and this evolution. And really, with this rebranding, we are just getting started. So you're going to see Metaphora really moving and shaking this year. And like I said, we'll be kicking it off with a few things, with this Manifest conference and with our partnership with our guest that we're going to right now, Mr. Forester.
Yeah, no, that glad you brought that up. We're pushing this new initiative for partnerships hard this coming year. So this is like the first major one that we're announcing. Really excited to get to talk to Brad. In the pre-show, he seems like a really smart guy, a lot of interesting perspective. So looking forward to the conversation with him.
Definitely. And so with that, we're going to turn it over to us and our interview with Brad.
Brad, welcome to the Extra Mile Podcast.
Thank you. Good to be here with you guys.
We're really excited to have you. Got a lot of interesting topics on the agenda today. But first, before we dive into that, Brad, why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I came into logistics kind of an interesting way. I went to Michigan State University as an economics major.
Go Green.
Yeah, go Green. And failed out of most of my first introductory math classes there. So I switched majors from economics to logistics because I was working night shift at a company called RPS, Roadway Package System, which is now FedEx Ground. And I just loved it. I worked the night shift, humping boxes, unloading trailers, and doing pickup and delivery routes and drivers. So I kind of got into my blood there. And out of college, I went down to Texas for a few years on the shipper side and got involved in my first TMS implementation in 1996. And ever since then, I've moved from shipper side to software implementation for a company called Manugistics, which is now part of Blue Yonder, which is now part of Panasonic. As software acquisition things go, yeah, it's a crazy family tree there. And then back in 2003, I essentially went independent, started doing my own thing, independent consulting for transportation systems implementations. And since 2003, it's really just been rinse, repeat, do good work, clients keep coming back, the book of business grows. I had to hire a team. We got so busy. And now we're a group of about 25 employees here at JBF Consulting. And essentially what we do at JBF is help shippers, 3PLs, logistics service providers with the strategy, selection, implementation, and stewardship of logistics technology, right? A lot of the work we do is around technology. We have a small part of our business. It's more management consulting, operational improvements, and things like that. But it's really about leveraging people, leveraging process, and all around technology and how it can improve shippers' operations. So that's JBF in a nutshell and a little bit about my background.
Can you also share with us your skincare routine? Because for those who don't know Brad necessarily, he is not 25, but absolutely looks 10 to 15 years younger than me, who is nearly 40. So feel free to share that as well, Brad.
Yeah, I feel like there was a part of that story where you left out the part where you cloned yourself right out of college, and this is who you are. This is what you look like.
Guys, it's really just a lot of moisturizer, right? So
Gotcha.
yeah, it's heavy moisturizer. It is it takes up about 6 hours of my day. Unfortunately, I didn't get the memo that I've got to also worry about hair loss and the receding hairline. I didn't jump on that fast enough. Yeah, I didn't jump on that fast enough. But yeah, and the moisturizer also has a hidden benefit that it keeps the facial hair away, right? So Bain, I don't know, maybe it's just a lack of moisture.
Yeah, well, I know my wife said she'll divorce me if I ever get rid of this thing, so that's not happening anytime soon. So anyway, I always think it's interesting how folks kind of fall into logistics, supply chain, and everything goes into our industry. What is it you like most about this space? What kind of gets you up in the morning, keeps you going in this particular space, especially now given the amount of spotlight this space has on it?
It's always moving. It's real. It's always very exciting, and I find that the people are probably the best part of it in supply chain in general, but more specifically logistics. Logistics is very tangible, right? You can see trucks moving down the road. You can see boxes and pallets getting loaded onto trailers, right? So it's very real, as opposed to something like demand forecasting, which is just using mathematical techniques to figure out how much product to buy and where your inventory should be allocated. That to me is still supply chain, but it's less tangible, and that's why I've always loved logistics. But the people more than anything, because you have a wide range of people, a lot of different personalities, and I like that. But it's like you see a lot of humble people, very pragmatic people, and also operational people that just love the adrenaline, love the pump that operations can give them from a lift standpoint. So it's just a cool space.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. The breadth of people that you will meet, from white collar, blue collar, no collar, whatever you want to call it, it's definitely incredible. So I love that. Well, cool. Let's dive into some topics here. And Adam, I think we've got a few questions we already had teed up. I know we prepped a little bit. So why don't you start, and we'll just kind of alternate, and we'll just pepper Brad with questions.
Great. Thanks, Bain. Yeah, Brad. So it sounds like, within the breadth of what JBF does, who you guys work with across shippers, logistics service providers, 3PLs, you get a lot of perspective out there and talking to your clients. Talk to us a little bit about some of the broader transportation market trends that you're seeing and that you're hearing from your clients.
Yeah. So lately, Adam, what we've been hearing is certainly there's a lot of interest in how can I, as a shipper, how can I improve my import process, right? We know that there's a lot of friction right now. There's a lot of talk in the industry about supply chain issues. Even at the dinner table, I'm sure that everybody is in your circles are asking you questions about, why don't I have products on the grocery shelves, right? And even though it may not be like a logistics or a transportation driven thing, they know that you're in supply chain, right? So import process improvements are a big request right now. We're seeing a lot of interest in private fleet technologies and private fleet approaches. And I think this is, shippers are sensing that there's always going to be this kind of volatility in the capacity market with especially with over the road transportation. And they're looking for strategies to mitigate that risk, right? So I think you see shippers that have maybe 20 years ago, they abandoned their private fleet in favor of contract carrier capacity. But now I think the pendulum is starting to shift again, and you see shippers that are looking at private fleet as a possible alternative to securing that capacity. We're still seeing and hearing a lot of interest and a lot of requests with parcel and last mile. There's a capacity crunch in parcel as well, right? So there's just a ton of interest in how can I get my systems to accommodate some of these big seismic shifts that we're seeing in the market. 2-3 years ago, we didn't have parcel shippers that worried about not having FedEx and UPS pick up their freight on a daily basis, but now we are. We don't see, 80 steamship vessels sitting in the port of Long Beach a couple years ago, right? So there's some big black swan type events, and I think shippers are finding themselves back on their heels a little bit, right? So they're starting to think about, how can I tweak my systems or my process in this particular pain point and recover quicker? Or how can I get ahead of the next black swan event potentially through the use of, kind of designing some flexibility into my somewhat rigid logistics system or logistics process? So we hear a lot of stuff about that, and I think it's just it's an overall reflection of what people are talking about in the market in general. But I'm assuming that you guys at Carrier Direct are seeing similar types of challenges and things as well.
Yes, oh, absolutely. I mean, the problems coming across our desk, and actually, you weren't here for the opening segment, but now we're transitioning from Carrier Direct to Metaphora is the new rebrand. So
Metaphora.
That's right.
Which is Greek for transportation.
Is that right?
Was it Greek or ancient Greek? I remember on the big announcement internally, Adam, what they told us. I believe it was ancient Greek.
I got to brush up on my translation, but
yeah,
Greek for transportation. That's where we're at. But anyway, yeah, Brad, to your point, seismic shifts going on in the market. We see it on the day-to-day with our clients as well. People coming to us with just uncertainty. And what we specialize in is sort of like stabilizing that long-term strategy. So how do you mitigate the risk? How do you plan for the future? Double down on parts of your business that are differentiating, and how do you capitalize? How do you execute? So, but yes, I mean, we're certainly dealing with some of the curveballs that you mentioned at the top here, and it's been an exciting time. It's very real. You mentioned that as part of the things that gets you excited to get up in the morning. It's very real. When you turn on the news, when you walk into your local grocery store, the issues are real. You see it right in front of you, whether you're in the industry or whether you're just a regular person. And these questions come up every day, and it's very exciting times to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it is an interesting time, right? You can say that about logistics and supply chain more broadly, but there's never a dull moment. But this has been a very crazy time, just a crazy 3-year period in the market.
Absolutely, and I think one of the things that's the silver linings of that craziness and kind of that upheaval has been there's been this incredible focus on our industry, and part of that focus has been financial, and it's been the money being invested into supply chain technologies and into the various companies that are a part of that. Can you talk about what you're seeing from your clients with that, and then we can talk about some other things that go along with that technology piece?
Sure. So I see there's a kind of an overall theme with our recent client work that has been around agility and flexibility, right? So that's kind of what I would say is a key theme. And I think this is in response to a lot of the friction that we see in the supply chain, and not just supply chain too, but I want to point this out if I could here, not that it's a lengthy rabbit hole, but I think that just in general, the COVID pandemic has presented humans with some friction, right? Just making decisions now that used to be routine, that you never gave a second thought to. Should I go out to dinner with my friends? Should I go to the gym? Should I do this? You have now some things that are popping into your head, unless I'm totally unique.
Additional variables, absolutely.
Additional variables, additional things that you have to make quick decisions on. And those things are giving you just enough pause to create some friction, right? Maybe you do a few things less in any given period of time. And I think supply chains are very similar. There's friction that's introduced into the market, friction in the operations. Capacity is a perfect example of that. And I think shippers are now looking for flexible ways that they don't have to codify or hard code, very static processes to be able to recover from these new decisions that they're having to make on a daily or even an hourly basis when we're looking at freight transactions, right? we work with the majority of the clients that we serve are what I would consider mid to large shippers. So anything with a freight spend over 250 million, all the way up to a couple billion. There's a lot of transactions that go on there. You know, some of our clients are shipping 50 million parcels a year. That's a lot of micro decisions to make, and those decisions come down to the systems to automate and to make those decisions. And I think a lot of the traditional approaches to software implementation, especially in logistics, has been driven off of, hey, we've got this annual bid, right? We're going to secure new capacity, new carrier relationships, and new rates for these lanes in an annual way. And everything from that annual bid then gets kind of codified and built into the TMS systems and processes, almost like a kind of a routing guide. Those approaches don't work with all this friction and with all the volatility and with the current situation. So we see a lot of clients coming back to us saying, you know, we need to design this in a more flexible way. And I think now clients are seeing that, whereas in the past, they wouldn't necessarily invest in design techniques and design approaches to solve those, what we call edge cases. They design for the happy path, right? Here's this process represents 80% of our business. This is what we're going to pay money for to implement. The remaining 20% stuff, we'll handle those things manually. But now the 80% has a lot of friction. So the 20% is already manual. And now you've got shippers who can't accommodate and can't scale, and their systems are built very rigidly. So I think the theme is, what approaches can we take, if not systemic, to improve the flexibility and agility of our process using the technology and the tools that we already have? Some technology, some transportation systems in particular have made the investment to do things like, for example, microservices architecture. You see the Manhattan Active TM platform and the Manhattan Active WMS platform as being a good use case for that, where they're essentially architecting their technology to be more flexible for the benefit of their clients and customers. But if that flexibility architecturally hasn't made it into the technology and the products yet, then there are approaches for implementation that we can do to essentially design in flexibility, design in support systems that handle the edge cases and the exceptions, and be able to give shippers some options in terms of what the happy path is.
Gotcha. So, I mean, I think you hit on some really interesting points here. So this friction that you're speaking of is really just like a radical change in expectations that shippers now have to take. You know, when they punch in the morning and they are used to, like, as you mentioned, like tendering out their loads from the routing guide. Now they're getting a bunch of rejects for loads that, you know, used to be set it and forget it. So can you talk to us a little bit about these expectations, what shippers can do now to sort of mitigate some of that uncertainty? Also, like how it relates more specifically to like pricing. So if you have, your regular RFP pricing event, it's network wide, but you're getting all of these rejections in the routing guide once the awards are already issued, you know, how can a shipper become more flexible, more agile in mitigating some of those risks and now new expectations?
Yeah, that's a good question, Adam. So some of the approaches that we're working with clients around is it starts with the RFP. That's been a very popular place, right, in terms of the first thing to attack, because RFPs and procurement of rates and procurement of capacity, if you're a shipper, is very strategic. It's very much a transportation policy type of decision that involves procurement. It involves transportation. It involves warehousing. So it's a very strategic thing, and this is where we're recommending they start. And instead of, or in addition to a network-wide bid, which is typically an annual or 1 to 3 year type of event, we're guiding clients to be more active and think about procurement as a continuous process as opposed to a once in a year event. This will is the first technique that we introduce to them that can help build some flexibility and agility into the downstream systems, right? So if you kind of explode this out, and stop me if I get too geeky, or
geek away.
Too far down the rabbit hole, but if you have a network-wide bid that runs once a year, you take all of those thousands of rates and thousands of lanes and a primary and a secondary and a backup carrier mix, and you drop those into your system. The TMS is going to make either a cost-based or a service-based decision against all of that potential capacity. Now, the reality is, and we hear this all the time from shippers, is that their primary carrier is rejecting, the secondary is rejecting, and all of their backup carriers, who are their core carriers, are also rejecting. And we've got shippers that are billion-dollar shippers going 40% into the brokerage and spot market for their normal freight. So instead of an annual bid, let's look at the exceptions. Let's carve out a few clusters of lanes, which are maybe you're paying, if the shipper is paying above market on. We have tools and technology like DAT and Freight OS that can give us what the market is paying. Let's isolate those in a cluster, put them out to bid. Let's look at some of these new technologies and tools like Emerge or Leaf Logistics to say, where can I expand my net? I need to cast a bigger net to pull in new capacity here and get more competitive about our lanes. But I'm going to look at it in a very kind of isolated cluster way. I'm not going to go to market for the lanes where I'm paying under. I'm going to go to market for the lanes that I'm paying over, or through some sort of sales and operations planning dialogue. I know that I've got new capacity or new demand coming down the road, or a new DC that's going to open up where I have net new capacity that I need to pull into the market, and I'll put those out to bid. And having this nimbleness in terms of rates and capacity helps the system so that as an end user, if I'm a load planner and I click on the tender button, there's a much higher probability that the carrier that I've just tendered it to is actually going to pick up the freight because it was in a recent bid, it was in a recent award, and presumably the carrier has priced it and bid it appropriately, right? So I think that's one kind of example of how a shipper can get more nimble even without totally revamping their whole technology and toolkit.
That makes perfect sense to me. Just sort of curious. You spoke from the perspective of the billion-dollar shipper. Are you seeing this across the board with like medium size, or even with like some of the 3PLs and LSPs trying to battle some of the volatility of the transactional pricing swings? Are you seeing that across the board, or is it just with the big shippers?
Well, I think it is across the board, Adam. I think the smaller shippers, we do work with smaller shippers as well. Their challenges are more about scaling and less about margin and cost controls, right? So if you're a smaller shippers, like we just talked with one yesterday, they're still very much, hey, we in order to secure our capacity and grow as a business, we know that a kind of a core carrier program is important to us, and we want to be a shipper of choice. We know that these things are kind of prerequisites to be able to scale and move our product into the markets that we need to grow into and serve. So I think the smaller shipper is still focused on kind of the core fundamentals, the blocking and tackling, and I think that core carrier programs and shipper of choice are still fundamentals. We could argue whether shipper of choice is relevant to a medium and big shipper, yes or no, or maybe it's just kind of played out its value proposition for the big shippers at this point in time. but I do see that there is a consistent thread there that shippers of all sizes are looking to be able to build systems and approaches and processes within their operations that help to identify volatility and be able to adapt and respond to the volatility, especially with capacity and rates.
So I think you bring up a great point, Brad, and I do want to touch on that shipper of choice, and I think that's one that Adam and I kind of always giggle about, because that was in a past life both he and I shared. That was a term that was thrown out quite a bit. It's be a shipper of choice, and that was how a lot of 3PLs began to differentiate. Is they're going to give you the data to help you become a shipper of choice. Well, now we're in this market that is very heavily carrier influenced. Does being a shipper of choice even still matter? I mean, I know you said it's still definitely a thing, but is it going to matter in the future? Is moving towards these more dynamic type of pricing events and adoption of more technology? Is there going to be a difference in the shippers? Now, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so there has been a lot of talk within our client mix around shipper of choice. A few months ago, we did a LinkedIn poll about shipper of choice, and it was, we had a lot of interesting responses, right? But the quantity of responses was probably the more eye-opening thing, because it is a big topic. And I think from the shipper's perspective, you're seeing how much have I invested over the past 5 to 10 years in terms of trying to become a good shipper, right? I've built in lounges and made driver waiting areas more pleasant if you're driving and doing a live load or live unload. They've invested a lot there. They've invested a lot in their actual freight, in their product mix. Can I palletize it? Can I get it out of the boxes and the gaylords? Can I make it more attractive for the shipper to pick up? Can I build in, drop trailer programs? Can I make my yard operations more efficient so that it removes some of the friction if you're a driver? And they've paid a lot of money, and they've invested a lot of time into these programs like shipper of choice, and they're not seeing the payoff, or they're seeing it. They saw it help maybe improve some capacity, or maybe in some cases reduce their rates in certain lanes or with certain carriers. But in the past couple years, where you start to see from the shipper's perspective anyway, carriers are now chasing the dollars, chasing the yield. They're, they had committed capacity to a shipper, and they can't even hit a single load, so it's like, I think shippers are kind of saying, maybe they're a little cynical, but I think it's like, is the juice worth the squeeze, or is the climb worth the view, right? So I think it's a fundamental good practice to have clean freight, to have palletized freight. It's shrunk wrapped. I think drop trailer programs are great. There's no reason why you shouldn't have some basic necessities and conveniences for a driver, especially during COVID, right? So I think those things retain, but I think now shippers are starting to look at those shipper of choice programs as, it's not going to move the needle, because we've seen in markets where the carriers are controlling the capacity, they have the pricing power right now. I can't get my freight picked up. So the shipper of choice programs aren't really helping me here in this market.
Gotcha. Actually, great segue into my next question here. So if the carriers are chasing the dollars and cents, and they hold the leverage in terms of like, hey, capacity is king, I get to pick and choose where I'm going to go pick up. Should shippers be considering the profitability of carriers to increase the likelihood that carriers are keeping up with their commitments on awards? Like when they're getting the bids in from carriers, should they be thinking to themselves, okay, I want obviously the best rate to ship to manage my transportation, but should I also be baking in a few extra $100 just to like stay on the carrier's good side to give me a better chance of getting my freight picked up at the end of the day?
Well, that's an interesting question, Adam, but I think I don't think the shippers are viewing carrier profitability as a top 3 item on their kind of policy roadmap, right? There's fundamentally, if you go back 25, 30 years, purchasing and procurement philosophy says you shouldn't put a price there in front of your vendors that puts them out of business, right? There's no beneficiary in pricing too low. But on the counter of that, it's like the shipper should not be concerned with huge profits for a carrier. I think shippers are going to focus on, did you live up to the commitments that you gave us when we negotiated the agreement, right? If you and I shake hands and say, I'll give you $3.85 a mile and I'll give you 10 trailers a week, and at the end of the day, you haven't given me, you've given me 2 trailers in a month, and the remaining loads I have to go out to the spot market and I'm paying $5 a mile. I'm not going to view you as being that strategic for my business. And that's kind of just a fundamental business relationship thing here, right? So I don't think shippers should be concerned about carrier profitability outside of, hey, look, we don't want to rob you. We don't want to put you out of business, right? I shouldn't give my carriers 90-day payment terms, right? That's not business friendly, right? Nobody should have to deal with 90-day payment terms. That's me talking as a business owner as well.
I mean,
right?
I got a couple of shippers in mind right now that are like, man, you might want to talk to them, Brad.
I know. And we see the shippers who have kind of moved and shifted all of their philosophies and policies to, hey, I want to increase the capacity that I have. I want to increase the quality of delivery in my carrier relationships. Those are the ones who have invested in core carrier programs, shipper of choice programs, and they're still doing annual network-wide bids. And I think they're getting hurt. And I think the byproduct of that is they see carriers in the market right now that are just having huge windfall profits. And the carriers that are just raking in the profits right now, I think this is the warning, because shippers are, and people like us from an approach standpoint, are working with shippers to say, let's do mini bids. Let's make your systems more agile. Let's make your systems more self-learning. And I'll give you a small example here for the listeners on the podcast that are carriers, right? So if I'm working with a shipper, I'm going to tell them there's a technique that I can use here that says, if the carrier declines a load, we're going to start keeping track of that. And we're going to start looking at what is the probability that this carrier is going to decline the load. And we're actually going to bypass that carrier as a tender, as the first tender. It doesn't matter whether you're the cheapest or you have the most available capacity or you have an agreement for that capacity. It is, what did you actually do for us historically that is going to give me a probability that then I can use in my system to influence how the TMS selects you as the carrier for this freight. So over time, those carriers, I think, that are chasing the dollars and chasing the margin and the yield are going to shoot themselves in the foot, or there's a possibility that they shoot themselves in the foot, because shippers are now getting more sophisticated, where they're going to look at what is the probability that you're going to reject it, what is the probability of on-time performance, and how much am I paying for that? I'm not going to pay for that if I have to go to the spot market anyway. I'll just go to the spot market to start, because then I'm going to be able to secure a competitive capacity against the people who are also competing for the same capacity in that market. So there's a lot of really interesting things here that shippers are starting to utilize as an implementation tactic that over time could blow up in the carrier spaces in the next 2 to 3 years.
I think it's all those are awesome points, Brad. And I'll say this a little bit from the carrier perspective. And because I agree in that I don't necessarily like to see massive profits all coming off of a single customer. There should not be one way too advantageous piece of the relationship when it comes is very symbiotic, right? And the carriers certainly need shippers to be able to have freight to haul. Shippers need carriers to haul their freight. And so there is a symbiosis there that absolutely has to be considered. And I think it's an important piece if you're truly going to be partners and kind of get away from truly what the market is. I think we're going to hit on some of the market swings here as we wrap. To truly get away from what the market is doing and limit that exposure on both sides is having that understanding and that discussion around ensuring that there's a reasonable, and now to be fair, that this now goes down the rabbit hole of what is reasonable profitability, how does that work? And so, and is it ultimately up to a shipper and a manufacturer of goods to go outside their core business and help understand how a carrier runs their business? I think it's an important question to ask. And I think it's important for shippers to understand, because of the margins that typically carriers run off of, which are a lot thinner, to know that this is to truly be a partnership. There does have to be consideration on that. But to your point, I also don't believe it's right for carriers to be sitting around 30-40% margins on every single load simply because that's what the market dictates. That's not a good partnership. That creates everything as transactional.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, if I had to draw an analogy, and this may not be a great analogy, but I have a 14-year-old son. I have 3 boys. My oldest is 14. So if I give him an allowance and I start just throwing money at him week after week after week, and he goes off and does whatever he wants, he's got a new windfall, right? He's got a little money. What he does with it, we'll kind of give him some leeway and latitude. But fundamentally, there's a set of expectations that I would have as a parent, providing money or consideration for my son in order to do these things. There's some fundamental things that need to happen, right? He's got to get good grades. He's got to do well in school. And if those fundamental things start to suffer, then I'm going to look at the money that I'm giving him as being like, I'm creating an incentive here that is bad for me. I'm giving you this money, and now all you do is play video games and at the expense of your schooling. And I think there's a little bit of that with shippers and carriers today.
I would agree.
Shippers are getting cynical about the money that they're throwing into the spot market or the money that was committed to. And there's a handshake agreement between the shipper and the carrier. And I think that it's kind of like it's imbalanced right now. And I feel like the shippers overall, and I'm not a proxy for all shippers, but the things that I hear is a little bit cynical. I don't think that shippers feel that the carriers are holding up their end of the bargain right now.
I am inclined to agree, even though, again, also not the proxy for all carriers, but I will always like to make sure their voices get heard. I'm in agreement in that it's how things are operating right now isn't right. I think that's pretty common ground for everyone. But creating that ecosystem that is mutually beneficial is ultimately what. And I think that's one of the things that both our organizations really focus on, is being able to do that. How do you create good carrier partnerships? How do you find good shippers that pay well? And when I say pay well, I mean they pay on time. There's minimal friction when it comes to that process. All those things are very, very important, because it may not be higher rates, but if you have better cash flow, that could be equally, almost more important if you're a carrier.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
So,
and I still, on the shipper side, I still see shippers doing things for the benefit of the carriers. I don't see shipper of choice philosophy and core carrier programs going away anytime soon. I do still see a lot of shippers. There's a lot of interest right now in yard management systems, right? They want to reduce the detention. They want to increase the drop trailer programs and the use of drop trailers with their carriers, because it does remove friction. It's an investment that the shippers are making, I think, for the benefit of the market overall, right? Because as we know, right, we're kind of hooked up into the same market and people, talking heads, et cetera. When we remove detention, when we remove wait time, when we remove dwell from carriers who are moving our freight, that improves our capacity picture. That benefits everybody in the market, right? Even end consumers benefit from improving efficiencies with yard operations and dwell time and detention, because new capacity comes back in the market, right? So it's fundamental. And I don't see shippers going away from that. I do think that they're still relatively pragmatic, and it's pretty easy to make a business case. If you invest X number of dollars in this technology, you'll get X plus 1 return or X plus 2 return in terms of operational improvements or capacity or some other soft benefit.
Some excellent points here. Couple things. One, Bain, you're now going to be the Lorax you speak for the carriers. And then, yeah, I've just aged myself there. That, like, I've got a 3-year-old son, so that's what we're into. That's where my head goes. But Brad, some excellent points here. Seem like a really smart guy, so I'm going to put you on the spot. I want you to take out your crystal ball and tell us when this pendulum is going to swing back the other way, taking us from capacity shortage back into surplus. We've been far on the one side of the pendulum with this shortage for like the better part of the last 2 years, I'd say. When's it coming back the other way?
So I think in over the road, in truckload specifically, I think that it could happen within the next 18 months, right? Because it wasn't that long ago where the pendulum was all the way on the shipper side and carriers were going out of business. That was what, 2018, 2019?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
2019 for sure.
Yeah. So
the race to the bottom.
I think it's going to happen pretty quickly. That's what my crystal ball says. For parcel and for last mile, I think it's 10 years out maybe, right? I think the capacity crunch there is so systemic because the parcel carriers, they're fixed network operations, right? Like LTL parcel, they've got to go through hubs and spokes, and it is a asset intensive business. It does not change quickly. You see a lot of stuff with Uber. I'm not sure that it's scalable, right? In this kind of distributed capacity model. So I think that one's going to take a lot more time to play out. We're working with a lot of shippers right now who are just really hurt, like existential threat type situations for some clients where parcel carriers are walking away from millions of packages and parcels a year just based on yield and uncompetitive rates. And instead of renegotiating, they're just totally walking away from the table, which I think is terrible business practice. I see that one is going to take a lot longer to shake out than truckload over the road type stuff. My crystal ball.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate a little insight into
that. Yeah. And what about you guys? I mean, what do you hear when you talk with carriers? Are they getting anxious? Do they think that the sun is setting and they're not going to be able to make hay, or are they still confident looking into 2023?
So I guess from my point of view, and I don't know if you want to share, some things. I know we work with different client bases here, and so really what I'm seeing a couple things. One is the doubling down on 3PL services. You see a lot of carriers, and even we mentioned it, a lot of even shippers are looking at providing broker services. And so trying to take hold of some of those networks and trying to provide additional capacity through, partner channels. I'm seeing a lot of mid-sized carriers, and then brokerage is also looking to either do, M&A is still very, 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 very popular right now. And so picking off smaller carriers to bring into their network so they can be either an asset light or an asset backed type brokerage. So we're seeing both of those kind of going on, where a lot of folks are wanting to be able to say, we can provide all these things. We can provide logistics services. We can provide, asset-based services. We also have some warehousing, and kind of looking at those different routes. And so my crystal ball, first driver, second opinion, is M&A is going to continue significantly on the 3PL and transportation side. And I think you're going to see a few shippers also go the route of M&A with various transportation providers, whether it's going to be 3PLs or assets or both.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're also starting, you mentioned brokerage, Bain, and I had never seen it before, but in the past 2 years, we've actually started, we've got 3 clients that we're working with, and they're at various stages of this journey, but they're private fleet shippers, right? They also do some contract carrier transportation as well, but they've invested in their assets. They're a private fleet operator. Now they're looking to make use of this available capacity and make their assets profitable, and they're going to brokerage, right? They're actually standing up brokerage operations within a shipper entity, which is just totally unfathomable to me, just based on the past 20 23 years I've been doing this stuff, I just never heard of. And now you actually see shippers who are going out and acquiring transportation companies. They're acquiring, truckload companies and things like that to increase their assets. And I think it's all about efficiencies. It's all about securing capacity, and having capacity is really important right now, and being in control of that. And then making money, right? Because essentially the systems and the process for brokerage are really not that much different than booking freight if you're a shipper, right? So there's a little bit more of a business element to it that increases some of the nuances and the uniquenesses in the systems, but it's a pretty interesting time in the market if you're dealing with carriers and shippers like we both are.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like that 18-month shot. We'll be calling you then to have you back on to talk about
we'll pencil it in right now, next episode.
That's right. We're booking you for the follow-up. But this has been great. Excellent perspective on the shipper side, but also taking into consideration the entire transportation logistics ecosystem. I've learned a lot. This has been great. Want to thank you very much for your time here, Brad.
I'm sensing a wrap, Adam. Are you kicking me out of the show now?
Well, I know that you said that you've got some calls coming up, so I don't want to pull you away from this.
I have very demanding shippers with a very rigid schedule. It's a great time. It's a good market. As you guys are doing well, I know that our companies are very similar culture-wise. So it's a fun time to be in this space. There's a lot of fun things, interesting things, and very deep things to talk about.
Absolutely.
So yeah, hopefully it's not 18 months. 18 months from now, maybe I'll have a little shadow. If I let the beard grow out, I'll have like a little shadow 18 months from now.
I'm here for it.
I'll never be able to best you, Bain. And I'm 163 pounds soaking wet. You could probably, spin me around a few times overhead in some sort of like clean and jerk type thing.
I think my max overhead press is 235. So yeah, I think I got you. We'll be all right.
You got me.
But you're safe around me too. So
That's true.
So Brad, how do people get a hold of you?
You can hit the website, jbf-consulting.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. LinkedIn Brad Forester. Otherwise, I'm here.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate the time so much. And also make sure folks, when you're listening to this, Brad is actually going to be at a conference, Manifest, in Las Vegas, and we'll be announcing a very big announcement between Metaphora and JBF. We'll also be coming that day. So if you said get a chance to be out in Las Vegas, feel free to grab Brad, grab myself. I will be there as well, and we look forward to seeing everybody there.
I look forward to it as well, and I can't wait to see the Metaphora logo. I'm gonna enjoy that. That's exciting.
Same.
Though. That's exciting,
very excited
to go through a rebrand. Good job. Good work, guys.
Appreciate it.
Our team's working really hard on that. So with that, everybody, we appreciate everybody listening. Make sure to share this. Make sure to like, subscribe, and to comment. Feel free to reach out to Brad, Adam, or myself if you have any questions. We will see everybody next time on the Extra Mile Podcast.
Yeah. I feel pumped up already.